bankrupt Pakistan's big dream. Freedom from the IMF by selling fighter jets? A country whose treasury is almost empty, where every few months the government waits for an installment from the International Monetary Fund, where inflation is choking the common man's breath, and that very country's minister sits in front of TV cameras and says, now we won't need the IMF anymore. Hearing this feels like someone standing in a drowning ocean and saying, I don't know how to swim, but today I'll win the Olympics. The question is not that Pakistan made such a statement. The real question is, where did this much confidence come from? Let us tell you that Pakistan's economic condition is no secret. The government knows it, the army knows it, and the common people feel its impact every day in their lives. Yet, Pakistan's politics and rhetoric have an old DNA. No matter how bad the ground reality is, the talk will always be about greatness. The latest example of this DNA is Pakistan's defense minister, whose statement is currently circulating everywhere. From social media to news debates, a minister sitting under the bright lights of a TV studio, looking straight into the camera, confidently says that within the next 6 months Pakistan will not need IMF assistance. This was not an off-camera comment. It was not a slip of the tongue either. It was a calculated statement. And when a statement is calculated, there is some calculation behind it. The only question is, are these calculations based on reality or merely on dreams? If you look back at Pakistan's history, you'll find that whenever things go wrong there, the rulers either blame India or start narrating stories of military strength. This time too, nothing different happened. The narrative built behind this statement was that after the recent confrontation with India, the entire world has seen Pakistan's military strength. And on the basis of that strength, Pakistan can now support its economy by selling fighter jets. This is where the story takes a truly interesting turn. Because the very confrontation that Pakistan is presenting as a victory story is the one in which its reality was exposed the most. Through a targeted military operation, India sent a clear message that terrorism and its infrastructure would not be spared. This was not a symbolic action. It was a precise and decisive operation carried out on the ground. And the damage Pakistan suffered was not just physical, it was psychological as well. Terrorist hideouts in Pakistan and the areas under its control were destroyed. Those locations that had long been described as not just camps, training centers, launch pads, logistics hubs. Everything was dismantled one by one. These were the very places that had been used for decades to run a proxy war against India. And when this infrastructure collapsed, a major strategic myth of Pakistan collapsed along with it. But in Pakistan's politics, there is no tradition of calling defeat a defeat. Even a loss is tried to be sold as a victory. That is why the same episode is now being projected as proof for fighter jet marketing. It is being said the world has seen how capable Pakistan's army is. The question is, did the world really see what Pakistan wants it to see? The reality is that after this entire episode, several of Pakistan's air bases suffered damage. Questions were raised about its air defense capabilities. Global defense analysts openly expressed doubts about the survivability of its fighter jets. But none of this is mentioned in Pakistan's TV studios. There, only one line keeps running. We showed the world. Now let's come to the real source of the confidence behind the statement. In recent days, Pakistan did receive a small diplomatic boost. The Air Force chief of a neighboring country visited Pakistan. Meetings were held under military protocol. Photos were taken, statements were issued. And in those statements, it was said that the Air Force of that country was showing interest in Pakistan's JF-17 fighter jets. Pay attention. Interest. Not a deal, not an order. Just interest. But in Pakistan's domestic politics, interest is turned into a deal, and a deal is turned into a revolution. The same thing happened here. Headlines began circulating on social media. Pakistan's fighter jets in demand. And from there, dreams of freedom from the IMF began to be woven. Now pause for a moment and think. How much money does selling a fighter jet actually bring in? And can that money really end a country's dependence on the IMF? The IMF doesn't just mean loans. The IMF represents foreign reserve support, policy credibility, investor confidence, and balance of payment stability. None of this changes overnight with a single defense deal. The biggest problem with Pakistan's economy is not that it lacks resources. The problem is that its priorities have consistently been wrong. For decades, the focus has been more on the security establishment than on the economy. Education, healthcare, manufacturing, exports. Everything kept falling behind. And as the economy weakened, the IMF became a habit. In every crisis, the same door was knocked on. Today, Pakistan is counted among the most debt-ridden countries in the world. External debt, domestic debt, rollover obligations. Pressure exists on every front. Every few months, foreign reserves fall to dangerously low levels. Even to pay import bills, Pakistan has to wait for an IMF tranche. In such a situation, saying we won't need the IMF anymore sounds more like fantasy than ground reality. Even the money that comes from the IMF is not free. It comes with a long list of reforms. Conditions to cut subsidies, demands to raise taxes, rationalization of energy prices. All of this is politically painful in Pakistan. That's why the IMF is publicly criticized every time. But privately, it is the IMF's door that is reached first. Now Pakistan faces another challenge. Credibility. In international markets, a country's credibility is built not by its statements, but by its actions. When a country repeatedly reaches the brink of loan defaults, keeps changing policies, and remains politically unstable, investors lose trust. In such a scenario, one or two defense deals do not change perceptions overnight. The JF-17 fighter jet has its own limitations. It is not a cutting-edge fifth-generation aircraft. It is an affordable entry-level fighter designed for the specific needs of certain countries. Its market niche is small, and in the defense market, buyers don't just purchase a jet. They buy an entire ecosystem: maintenance, spare parts, training, upgrades, and long-term support. Pakistan's capacity on these fronts is also being questioned. Now try to understand the IMF angle a little more deeply. The IMF doesn't just provide bailouts. It buys time. Time for a country to carry out reforms. Pakistan has taken that time again and again, but the reforms have remained half-hearted. The tax base was never widened. Elite capture continued. The informal economy could not be formalized. That is why the same crisis keeps returning every few years. In this entire narrative, the most tragic situation is that of Pakistan's common people. Inflation, unemployment, currency depreciation. The burden of all this is borne by the ordinary citizen. When ministers show dreams of freedom from the IMF by selling fighter jets, the common man standing on the ground wonders, will this change my life? And more often than not, the answer is no. Confidence becomes dangerous when it turns into delusion. Healthy confidence pushes an economy forward. Delusional confidence drags it deeper into a pit. Dreaming of selling fighter jets is not wrong. But treating it as a shortcut to freedom from the IMF is dangerous. History teaches us that sustainable growth does not come from missiles and jets, but from factories, exports, education, and stable policies. Until Pakistan accepts this basic truth, distance from the IMF will remain only in statements, not in reality. And perhaps that is the biggest irony of this entire story.
Video has taught you something new. Do not forget to like and share this video so that this information can reach others as well. Your likes and shares are a source of inspiration for us. If you have any questions or suggestions, please let us know in the comments. It will be our honor to answer your questions and listen to suggestions. And yes, if you like our content, subscribe to the channel and press the bell icon so that you stay connected with every new story. Thank you. GRT Business YouTube channel sources, news from various news agencies, opinion polls and other public sources. We try to ensure that every report and summary is accurate and verified, but we are not responsible for any dispute or error. Our aim is only to provide you with accurate information.